It looks like we're live. Excellent. Today, I'm quite excited. Suzi is the first of the people that I'm going to introduce you to. So I've simply called this Meet Suzi. I really want you to meet Suzi because Suzi is phenomenal. She's a powerhouse. But before we get started, we're streaming in multiple places. I know Suzi's streaming on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm streaming on LinkedIn, so you can find me, Jenny Kovacs, the Queen of Being Seen on LinkedIn. You can find me on my Facebook page, which is Jenny Kovacs, the Queen of Being Seen, unpredictably there. And also I'm on YouTube, and the easiest way to find me is at Jenny Kovacs, which it says down there. And just subscribe if you can while you're there. I'd appreciate it so much. So Suzi is streaming Facebook and LinkedIn. How can people find you, Suzi?
Hi. So LinkedIn is just Suzi Butcher. You should be able to find me. I think I'm the only Suzi Butcher, hopefully. Facebook at Suzi Butcher Personal Strategy Coach. So you can find me on either of those two places.
Excellent. And if you are listening to this in the background somewhere and not looking at the screen, Suzi is Suzi, not Y. Just so you know. Okay, so now I'll properly introduce you to Suzi. I met Suzi in a group that I was in some time ago, and then had the fortune of getting to know a bit more about her through a fun video game that we played. We'll just say that. And then we both decided, for some unknown reason, to do something which somebody described as a sprint. I'd say it's more of a marathon. And we decided that we wanted to show up as part of showing up online, to be visible on video for over the space of a year. And what I love is how Suzi decided to jump into this, and how she decided to go. But before any of that, I'd like you to meet Suzi. So hello and welcome, Suzi.
Thank you, Jenny. Lovely to be here.
So I'm going to try to curb my curiosity, but anyone knows me knows that I'm nosy by nature, and I would love people who are meeting you online here for the first time. They might be looking or seeing you on your platforms for the first time. Will you just tell them a bit about what you do? A little introduction about what you do, and I'll get into asking more questions then.
Sure. So I suppose it's useful to have a bit of background, is that I came from a journalism background, for most of my working life. But I got to a point in my 40s where I thought, this is great and it's been wonderful and I've had some amazing experiences, met incredible people, all of those things, but it's not quite enough for me. And I couldn't really put my finger on what that was. I think part of it was that I wanted to do something of my own, sort of my own business, might have my own sort of, be in charge of my own destiny, I guess. But I didn't really know what that was. So I put it off for ages and ages. Oh, it's all right. I was quite institutionalized by that time. And then what happened is it was the time of the refugee crisis in about 2015, 2016, where all the Syrian refugees were leaving Syria, and many were making their way to Europe. And we were covering this story with camera crews all over Europe. And I was in London dealing with all this video that was coming in. And I just remember thinking, these people have so little control over where they're going to end up. They've had to leave a home they probably never wanted to leave. They have no idea what's ahead of them. They're hitting borders everywhere they go. And it just made me realize how much control I actually have over my own life and how privileged and fortunate I am to have that. Yet still, I'm doing something that I don't actually want to make my life. And it really, I guess it just made me think, I have some savings in the bank. I have a roof over my head. I have all sorts of skills I've developed over the years. And I have a supportive person in my life. Like, there is absolutely no reason why I couldn't take a risk and do something different. And so that's what made me decide to do that, even though I didn't know what it was. And so for the next few years, so I did leave and I was able to do freelance work and some other work related to my industry. But I realized there were many people like me, and especially women around my age. And so at this point, I'd started playing with the idea of coaching. And so I got my coaching qualification, started coaching, but coached anyone at that point, anyone who'd have me. But over time, more and more, I realized that what was important for me was to really focus on people like myself, as so many coaches end up doing, really, or people who go into business end up dealing with something that's been part of their own lives. And I just realized we have this massive untapped resource of Generation X women who come with all sorts of skills and experience. And, you know, we grew up running around on bare feet on gravel, and, you know, all those stories you hear from from Gen X women. Yet so many people didn't feel confident enough to really play to their strengths and contribute to the world what they wanted to contribute. Because also at this age, I think what happens is a lot of people start feeling like, I want to do something more meaningful, something that has a greater impact than, as I heard someone say the other day, I don't want to be making rich men richer, which is what they felt their job was. And so I started really focusing on working with women who were at that point in their life and who really needed to do something that was more aligned with their values. And so I set up a group program called Missions Accepted, which is about us accepting whatever that mission might be. First of all, we've got to figure out what it is, and then we have to make it happen. But it's kind of that process of accepting and saying, yes, this is important to me. This is what I want to do. So that's where I'm putting most of my time and energy now.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. I'm curious, when you talked about that and you talked about going into coaching, there were so many modalities that you could have picked. Like what had you choose coaching instead of going into a different modality to help people?
I guess it was just it, you know, I'd actually been interested in the idea of coaching many years before. The first time I heard about a life coach, I thought, wow, that's like a really interesting idea. I need one, and how do I get to be one? You know, and then I got the job that I got, and I got distracted from it. And what's interesting I find with so many people is that it often is something from the past that comes forward. And I realized that I've kind of been coaching. You know, I was the one at school who, you know, would try and intervene and resolve conflict. In fact, I have a story from school where I was, somebody tried to beat me up at school when I was 13. And I never got very far before. Well, she wanted to have a fight with me, and I didn't want to have a fight. So therefore, it would have been a beating up. And the teachers stopped it, and we were pulled into different rooms. And, you know, eventually the teachers spoke to both of us separately. And then they said, oh, you know, I'm going to call her Deborah. I don't want her, it's not her real name, but Deborah wants to apologise. And I thought, fine, great, that's good with me. We move on. And I went into the room, and it ended up being a coaching session, because Deborah told me all about her really tough life and these kind of amazing ways she'd brought up her younger brothers and all these things. And I thought that might have been my first real coaching session. So I think it's been in me. There's something I really like about, I do one-to-one coaching as well, but the group coaching is extra special because people don't just get me. In fact, I'm a tiny part of it. It's the group and the power of the group that actually makes the difference, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, I resonate with that. I was always the placater. And yeah, very much like you. I went through school, I never once had a fight. And I remember thinking I talked my way out of a fight actually once in a similar way. So it must be something that runs in our genes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I just think there's always an opportunity to make the world better, and coaching is one of those ways to get in there and figure out why it's not right and how we make it better.
It's funny because I'd written down that you're really passionate about women playing bigger in the world and mending the world. And I know you talk about different kind of ways in which people do that. Do you want to say a bit more about the mending the world bit?
Yeah, I mean, I just realised, look, I'm quite clear about this as the women in the group, and it's we think the world's a bit messed up, and we don't think it's been helped by the fact that we've had a patriarchy, and that women's voices have not been part of the conversation to the level that men's voices have for so long. And I think women often think there are different ways that we could do things. Many of us tried to be great men in our jobs and have decided that that is not actually the path we want to go down anymore. That I heard a great expression saying that, you know, women don't want a seat at the table, they want to build a new table. And I
Very
think
true.
that is so true of everyone who's in my group, including the one man that is actually in our group, who's been very brave and decided he wanted to join us. And it's like, yeah, I do think there's just that whole section of society that have not really been able to have the influence they might have had. And I do think for many of us, it is about wanting to fix things. And I don't know, there's something going on right now with the, you know, perhaps with Kamala Harris coming to the fore and something. I feel like there is actually a real change and in the air, thank goodness, because we've kind of got to the brink. And this is when we need women to rise and add that voice, not to, you know, and obviously have an influence that many men are also welcoming, because it's not like, oh, you know, all men, as we definitely know that we wouldn't come from a perspective of all men are bad and shouldn't be allowed anywhere near the top of the table, but we need to balance that out. And I think women coming through and standing up and playing bigger and making sure their voices are heard is what will make a huge difference.
It's interesting because there is the stuff that's going on in America, and there's the fact that they're currently in the UK, how many women that are now in Parliament. And a stat that I read yesterday through a share actually on LinkedIn, this year in the Olympics, there are virtually an equal amount of men and women that are competing.
Yeah.
I'm like, how cool is that? Thinking when you think back that the Olympics started, it was a men only sport. So this is the thing, because I think sometimes people get worried that you know, if we're making a stand for women, that we're bashing them. But this is part of why I get out of bed in the morning. Like, I talk about visibility, and when people don't know me, they think I'm like jazz hands, you know, Insta influencer, and, you know, point and dance on TikTok. But for me, it goes a lot deeper. Sometimes it's the person, sometimes it's their work, sometimes it's their message. It's that needs to be visible. It has its own life, its own entity, needs to tell a story. So I think it's a really important thing to be talking about. And I know that you and I both follow Lee on Lee Chambers on Instagram, on LinkedIn too, who I fortunately was able to meet in person last year at the
Yeah.
Yeah, really great guy. So normally I would say, oh, can you give us some tips or some hints on mending the world? But I'm actually going to ask you a slightly different question. I know that you talk about mother wound, or the witch wound, not the mother wound, witch wound. What are sort of three top things that you could say to that?
Yeah, and it's not my idea, and I think I need to read a lot more into it as well. But the idea around it is that recognizing that for millions of years, probably, but certainly thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, women have not had very much control over their own lives. They had to be with a member of the tribe. They had to be partnered up to be looked after. And if you didn't please other people in the tribe, you got thrown out and you died. This then carried on into a world where if women spoke up, they were often accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake or drowned, or all the different things that might happen. So, and we have, apparently, we absorb all that. We still have that in our genes. So it's not surprising, and many women will relate to this, and some men as well, but certainly many women will relate to that feeling when you write something on LinkedIn or you go on video and are visible and talk about something that feels a little bit controversial, feels like you're putting your head above the parapet. You almost feel like you might die. There's this kind of feeling that comes across. If that doesn't happen to you, I'm delighted for you, but for many of us, it does. And that has been described as the witch wound. It's this feeling that if we put our head above the parapet, we might be burnt at the stake as a witch, which of course, rationally, we know that that's not going to happen, but it's a very real feeling for a lot of people. And I think once we recognize that, oh, when I get that feeling, that's all it is, right? It's an inherited thing from thousands of years of having to keep our head down. It's easier for us to manage that and realize, oh no, well, obviously we're not going to die, but also there is a reason for it. And it's not just us, something that we inherit. So I guess I'd just encourage people who are thinking about being more visible, when you get that feeling, recognize it for what it is, and then you can move beyond it.
How does it come up then, do you think, in your work? I mean, I know you've touched on that how it comes up for people. Funny, I've just written a piece to post out, and it talks about the feeling that I'm going to come to harm, because people that I've worked with have often said, I know this sounds completely irrational, Jenny, but I feel like if I'm too visible, I could die.
Yeah.
I'm often without really knowing why. And that's the thing for a lot of us, it can be kind of deeply embedded or ingrained from when we were kids. So what would you say something common that you see in the people that you work with that comes up along these lines?
Yeah, I think it is about being worried about sharing their voice in any form. And yes, some of it might have been because they've spoken were silenced. I mean, I remember at university when I used to have conversations with people who were studying finance or economics or something, and I'd come up with something which is now universal basic income, but I didn't know that's what it was at the time, like this idea. And, they'd shut you down as being naive, way too hippie, left wing, Pollyanna-ish. And I believed them, so I'm sure we've all had those experiences where we've been shut down and put back into our box. And then 20, 30 years later, you realize you were right all along. and you think, that shows up for so many women. So part of it is inherited. Part of it is obviously our socialization and how we, the experiences we've had when we were younger. And it's not an easy thing to get over, I think. And it's just really, it's practice, isn't it? It's really just getting out there and realizing, oh, that's okay. I didn't, I can do it again tomorrow. But I feel it every day. I feel it every time I press the live button. It's, I have that little moment, but I can overcome it very quickly now.
Yeah, it's funny because I was being interviewed yesterday and I was saying that sometimes it has the ability to stop us and other times it has the ability to just pause us and, not move us forward. So speaking of kind of video and things like that, we decided to do this 365 days. And I think it's really important for me anyway, as part of this body of work, that this isn't, I want to say, made into a gimmickatized. Is that a word? I don't want it to be made into a gimmick. So it's not, we're doing 365 days and you should too, otherwise you're not visible. It's not about that. What I'm really interested in finding out was when we all decided to start this journey, we all decided to do it on our own terms. Do you want to share with people what you decided to do and why?
Yeah, so I know many people like you, Jenny, are doing it every day for 365 days, putting a video out there. I decided to just do weekdays. And part of the reason for that is I prefer doing live video rather than pre-recorded video, though you've encouraged me to do that and I can do it in a crunch. But I prefer it live. And I didn't want my weekend. I've come from a journalism background where I've worked nights and weekends and all of those things for so many years. And finally, I'm in control of my own hours a bit. Not to say it doesn't happen sometimes, but I just didn't want that pressure of thinking, because you'll laugh, Jenny. I still wake up every morning and think, oh, when am I going to do my live? And la, 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 la. So it is it's still a thing each day that I have to sort of make myself go and do, even though I love it once I've done it and when I'm doing it. And I just didn't want to have that pressure. So I decided, and I know it's very effective to do it on weekends because so many other people are not doing it on weekends, that is actually one of the best times to go out there and put your video out there. But also I have to admit something this week. This week I wasn't very well at the beginning of the week and I haven't done my lives this week. And I was like, the other thing is I got completely obsessed with booking a summer holiday because it's really late and I haven't done it yet. And so there are very few options.
I think you got your priorities right there.
I know, my whole days, the last 3 days have been trying to book this holiday. Anyway, it's all booked now. But I also, that for me, that was important as well, is to say, okay, so I've kind of lost this week apart from today. So that's fine. I can add an extra week at the end. I'm still going to do my 52 weeks. And and probably beyond, right? Because it's actually so effective, and it's a really important thing to be doing. But it was important for me to be able to control that myself. But I think, though, still, because there's a group of us doing it, it keeps you connected, when there's a group of you. If it was just me doing it by myself, I would drift off much earlier than I would. I think we're about week 10 or something, which I think I'm pretty proud I got to week 10, doing it every weekday.
Oh, it's been really good to watch, because I think people think I've done this before. I did it from February 2023 to February 2024. And I think the assumption is, oh, you've done it before, it'll be easy. I'm going to go back to where you say, but I still wake up and think. The reason that I even started doing this, like even the year before and now, was I need to stretch myself out of my comfort zone. I call it finding my edges. So it's not that I'm just a crazy thrill seeker, but I think sometimes if I'm asking people to, step up and be visible, what might be easy for me might not be easy for them, and vice versa. I have loads of people that tell me they're speakers, they speak to thousands of people, put a video in front of them, they can't, and vice versa. I'm always almost kind of like surprised, honored, and blessed. Somebody like you, journalism background, you could be teaching me a few things or two about cameras and all of that. So I always feel really honored when you decide to do it. And what I like about your journey is that you decided, I'm going to do this weekdays, not weekends. I'm going to have the time to myself. I'm not going to beat myself up if I can't do it for a reason. I remember at the beginning, some of you would ask, well, what happens when you're ill? I'm like, you just pick up and start off when you're better, or you can add days on, or you can do whatever you would like to. And I think that autonomy is really important. So I know I was kind of giggling as I said it, but the fact that you were like, no, I'm taking a few days out and I'm booking my holiday, this is important to me, I think speaks volumes to you. I'm really proud. And gosh, can you imagine if people are flying the wall in the group? Some of the things that have occurred even in the last few weeks have been quite eye-watering. And I think to do life, spin those plates, run businesses, work, do everything and navigate all of that. I'm in admiration of all of you in many different ways. So for anyone that thinks that it's an easy thing, oh, I'm just going to do it every day, it really isn't. It's like a marathon. You do hit a wall. You do doubt yourself. I had somebody comment, thankfully it wasn't a horrible comment. It was just a bit just eye rolling, when people try and pitch on your things. And it does make you think, oh, what's the point in doing this? So we go through a range of emotions. I think it's really, really important.
I think you also learn about yourself. So what I know makes me feel better about it, confident in doing it, is if I've sat down on the weekend and kind of planned what my lives are going to be each day, or what the topics are going to be, and I've created my StreamYards for them. So if you're using StreamYard, it's the bit about going in and creating the StreamYard thing that puts me off, actually. So if I do them ahead of time and I've got all my 5 for the next week, and I roughly know what I'm going to talk about, then it's much easier. So that's something I know I've learned about myself. It's not actually the going live so much. It's the thinking about what I'm going to talk about.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's the question that I'm asked the most. It doesn't matter if it's a CEO, it doesn't matter if somebody that's high profile, well known, it doesn't matter if it's someone that's getting started. It ultimately comes back to, what am I going to say? Not in a, I don't know how to talk about what I do type of way. It's like, what am I going to say? What am I going to talk about? So here's a little tip. We'll pretend that no one is listening. I sometimes will sort of view the StreamYard, but often I don't, because on some of the platforms it creates an event, and then you really need to be promoting the event so that people know about it. So what I do instead, in my humble Google Calendar, electronic calendar, any calendar is available, I have got the piece in my diary every day. It's recurring. I've decided to do either 10 a.m, 2 p.m, or 10 p.m. And what I quickly realized, even though I've kind of done it before, I don't actually like having to wait until 10 o'clock to do my, my live or my video, I feel tired. I feel like I ramble. I don't feel like I'm as coherent. And I only do it if I really can't do it at any other time. So I've decided, where I can, let me do it at 10. So what I do is I sit and take a moment to think, what am I going to talk about next week? And because I've got guests on each week for the next few weeks, I've only got 4 now. And what I do is I put a kind of quasi title in my calendar, and I just put a couple of bullet points of what I want to talk about. Otherwise, as I found out, I'll put, I don't know, how to embody what you're talking about when you're visible, and then I go back and think,
I don't remember what it was.
what was that all about? So I tend to do that, which means it makes it easy for the StreamYard piece because it's a cut and paste. I can usually change the title, and then it does make it easier. And it's almost like it gives me time to reflect and think. And I've often woken up thinking, oh, on that day when I talk about so-and-so, this is the one point I want to make, or these are the 3 things I want to talk about. And what people don't often know is that I don't use scripts. I actually teach people to not use scripts too, because it can really bind you into having to read something. You're probably trained in kind of teleprompting reading, but a lot of people aren't. And when they get lost in the place, they get lost. So I tend to do all of them. I literally will have 2 or 3 bullet points, and then I'll just cover them in that way. And the other thing that people probably don't know is I've had a year's worth of practice before, and I'm in my 2nd year of practice. You finesse stuff and you get better at it, or you decide what you want to drop, or you decide, actually, I want to focus on more people watching, or I want to focus on growing my audience, or I want to focus on bringing new people into my programs and stuff. So I quite like it, and it's fun. So I know we've gone quite a bit over. So in closing, where can people find you? Because
I think the easiest thing is LinkedIn. And finding me on there, and if any of this resonates with anyone and they want to have a quick chat, then you're just dropping me a DM in LinkedIn, and we can see if they think something like Missions Accepted would be useful for them. Obviously, I can go into a bit more information about what that's all about, or one-to-one coaching. So it depends where people are at. But that's definitely the easiest place. I mean, you might be able to find me on Facebook, but it's Suzi Butcher, Personal Strategy Coach. But certainly LinkedIn is probably the easiest for anyone who's watching it there.
Excellent. So I know that some destinations don't get that. I've actually typed in fact, I'll put it up on the screen as well. So Mission Accepted is Suzi's program. So wherever you connect with her or decide to connect with her, definitely go in and ask her. Because I can't help myself, and I really want people to understand what it's about for them. Why would somebody say, right, I think I need to go on the Missions Accepted program?
Sure. I'd say if you're in the work that you're doing, if you're feeling that you've fallen out of love with the job, right, and this is not what you want, there's something more that you could be doing. You potentially you've felt a bit undervalued at work. Your ideas might not have been picked up, and you feel like you just want to have more impact in the world, but you don't know quite what that is. And you're not sure if you've got the right experience, or you don't know how to adjust your experience to that, or you feel very not really having the confidence about going forward and just don't know where to start. Joining Missions Accepted, I have a whole series of exercises that you work through that help draw out what those things are. Most of the time people don't get that far through it before they've already got a load of ideas. And once you have some ideas, we figure out how you can experiment with those to see, really check that it is pressing those buttons that you want it to. And you've obviously got everybody in the group as well supporting you in that process. And we meet once a fortnight for an hour on Zoom on Monday evenings, so we can all share what's been happening in the last fortnight. You set some intentions for the next couple of weeks, just so you're constantly moving forward. I think it's for people often they know this is something they want to do, but because they're on their own, it's easy to get distracted and pulled back into whatever's going on at work, or and if you're not around people who feel the same way, you start doubting yourself on those things. So what we try to do is just have a tribe that are doing it and showing you that it is possible.
Excellent. So just in case you're watching this back or watching this live, contact Suzi, like connect with Suzi, ask her about the Mission Accepted program, have a look at some of the videos, because I know that she shared a bit about her programs on there, and I know that she maps it all out on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, Suzi. Is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, just it's been, for anyone who is thinking of working with Jenny on anything. I mean, I had done lives before. So it wasn't that I didn't, feel like it was possible or anything, but it was that extra, I don't know, just as I suggest people join my program, joining programs, joining with other people really helps you focus on doing that thing and saying, right, that's what I want to do more of. And Jenny certainly made me feel more comfortable to be myself, which is often, people feel like they're not being themselves when they're speaking on video. And she has great little exercises for you to do in a nice, safe environment so you can get your courage up to be visible, which is, if we're going to mend the world, we're going to have to show ourselves to do it.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for saying that. I wasn't intending for you to do that. But it's true, we do. When I first started that program, I think it was like 2016, I called it the 12-day video game. And of course, it's
the only video game I'm ever going to play, Jenny. I'm not a video game fan, so
exactly. But it kind of didn't really say what it did on the tin. And the other point that I do want to make is it is now called Confidence on Camera. But the biggest myth about it is that you only join it if you don't have confidence. And the reason it came about, so I'm glad you said that, was that so many people had said, when I asked them, why do you want to do this? They'd say things like, I want the confidence to be able to put myself out there to more people, or I want to grow my business. So I want the confidence to be able to grow my business and scale, or all of these things. So I couldn't unsee like over 100 times where people had said confidence or whatever. So that's why it was included. So don't think, oh, well, I'm confident and I need to do it. What it actually does is it sets, in a really fun way, I think anyway, it sets the bar for the credibility blocks, which actually makes it easier for you to sell yourself or your message on camera. So it's good fun. And you might, like Suzi, decide that you're going to Monday to Friday it and put yourself out there, most days.
Exactly. And if you do it most days, it's more days than you would have done if you didn't do it, right? So
exactly.
Thank you to beat ourselves up.
This is it. Thank you so much. I've really loved speaking to you in this way and sharing your work. So thank you. And I will be back tomorrow. I will probably be live just for a little bit tomorrow. And I will see you through the ethers, Suzi. Thank you so much.
Not tomorrow, on Monday.
You'll see Suzi on Monday, but it gives you 2 days to have a look back at some of the stuff that she's done.
Love it. Thanks, Jenny.
Take care. Bye.